morning, everybody. Super excited to be here. This is my first time, so I'm getting to know you. I'm getting to know the intricacies that you guys are all dealing with, and I'm very excited that I was behind Thomas, because Thomas, I think, did a perfect job in basically laying out what is what does an improvement opportunity look like from from an e-commerce perspective. We're totally not into that. But there's something, if you think about customer journey, that is often a bit forgotten, and that's not the commercial side. It's not the pricing. It's not the way customers are interacting with your salespeople. But it's about the payment. It's about the checkout. It's about the basically the ugly back end of the buying journey. And that's what I'm going to talk about with you a little bit. Hopefully I give you some inspiration or some thoughts to think about, because like Lisa was saying, you can have a wonderful customer experience all the way through until the checkout. But if your customer doesn't find the way he wants to pay, or if in the end the pricing is not adhered to that he has negotiated, or there's other specific needs that your buyer wants and needs before they actually want to receive the goods and the invoice and make a payment, you don't have a sale. So that's really what I'm trying to inspire you with today. Just real quick, TreviPay is a fintech company. We are in this business for more than 40 years. We help large manufacturers, retailers, corporate travel companies in their journey. We call it order to cash. It's basically everything in the B2B space, from onboarding, customer onboarding, underwriting, doing KYC, then invoice processing, settlement, to the supplier, to our client, and then working with their customers to make sure that the money comes in and do the collections. So, enough about me. So we had a bit of a provocative statement here, just to get your minds in the right spirit, which is, can net terms actually, or offering pay by invoice and offering payment terms, be a growth engine rather than a simple hygiene factor, let's say. So, another provocative question: what if growth in your e-commerce world wouldn't come from adding more SKUs or adjusting your pricing, but it would be basically improving the experience on the checkout or on the payment side? Would that be possible? Of course, I know the answer for me, but that's something for you to decide. So we did a lot of research amongst B2B buyers to get an understanding of what is it that they need. Again, as a fintech company, technology is our bread and butter, so we would typically listen to what buyers of our clients want and basically help them adjust the experience so that it's a great experience and basically our clients thrive. So from that research, and this is a part of our research and a part of a research that was done by the European Commission, it's about three things. It's about speed, it's about trust, and it's about flexibility. And I think we will all understand that in an e-commerce environment, those things are sort of logical, but not so easy to accomplish. So if you think about speed, right, and I loved what Thomas is saying about onboarding a customer. You have to become a customer first before you can even start the journey, right? But it takes 5 days, right, to become a customer. That's 5 days waiting for the sale to happen. Just being very provocative, right? So what if that could be an instant experience? What if somebody could be a new buyer, a new customer, comes on board and could be instantly approved and instantly buy, right? That's speed, right? Then, of course, invoice delivery, right? And we're, I think, all from Europe here, so everybody must be aware of the fact that in Europe, there's regulation that has kicked in last year. It has a window until 2030 to align on how we do invoicing in Europe. It's called e-invoicing mandates, but customers or buyers are expecting a compliant invoice. So, and not an invoice that comes in much later. No, the invoice needs to be correct and fast, because then they can make the payment, right? Then, if things do not go well, sometimes that happens, right? So there's a dispute. your buyer may want to talk to you about, hey, the quality isn't as expected, or, oh, my invoice isn't correct from a pricing perspective, right? How do you deal with that? Quite often that's a manual exercise, that's a manual interaction. It's emails going back and forth, right? That's not what buyers expect. They want a smooth and fast experience, they want a fast answer, right? And a fast resolution, right? Again, speed. Okay, trust. That's been mentioned here, and I think one of the statements that Lisa made earlier from clicks to relationships, right? I think relationships are, for me at least, equal to trust, right? You wanna have a sense of who do I do business with, right? Both the buyer towards the seller, but also from a seller towards the buyer, right? So it is that trust that matters, and it was said before as well. We don't want to replace people per se, right? No, the relationship matters from a sales perspective, but after the relationship has been established, you want to then make sure that that trust converts into the experience on a website or on a portal, right? And again, I mentioned the invoicing already. That's that if the invoice is accurate, if it is compliant, it builds on to the idea, I have a supplier I can work well with, let's say. And then flexibility, right? I mentioned it before. Flexible payment methods do matter. On our table here, we had a question about net terms. Well, that's the norm more or less in Europe. Well, it is to a certain extent, but there's still suppliers who do not want to offer credit. So they offer pay by invoice, but it's still an upfront payment rather than the payment coming in after the shipment of the goods. But there's also demand for longer payment terms. Some buyers want maybe longer terms than 90 days, maybe 60 or even 90 or even longer, right? That flexibility is also a request from B2B buyers that we found. So yeah, on the right you see all the the quotes or the statements that we got from research or that came out of the European Commission's research. But yeah, I found that at least worthwhile sharing with you, which is what we learned again. So then again, a little bit provocative. Are we talking about a smooth experience, or are there actually hidden pains? So again, the expectations on the left, right? If you think about a typical sales funnel, you'll see that, right? It's all about initially the interest, then the intent to buy, then the checkout and terms, making the payment, and only then the revenue can be acknowledged, right? So on the discovery side, buyers expect a digital experience, user-friendly, right? And I think that was laid out by Thomas, and I'm sure all of you have been thinking about it or have this in place, right? There's a lot of commercial focus on what's the experience for the buyer when they come onto our website, when they come onto our portal, right? Great. Then maybe a little challenging factor could be if you operate in an omni-channel environment. How do you make that experience consistent, right? So you can have an e-commerce channel, but you probably also have a sales team. You may even have field sales, or you may have a distribution channel, or all of the three, or you may have a telesales team, for example, in addition to your your field sales team. If you have different segments in your customer base, right? You want that experience to be the same or generic, right? Or that's at least what the buyers is expecting. And then on the decision, as I said, right, the sooner the decision is made, the better, right? Because you want that buyer to convert. You want that buyer to make that purchase, right? So it is incredibly important, and it's been confirmed by 83% of the buyers in Europe that they find that decision, can I purchase, and do I have the understanding of the terms for that purchase or for that deal, is incredibly relevant. Then the checkout terms, as I said, it's almost like a forgotten thing, because checkout is, okay, the deal's done, right? They've got it in the cart and the deal is done. Well, you won't believe how much abandonment there still is at checkout because there's something wrong with the order. Be it the pricing is not abided by, or the payment method is missing, or if there's only a credit card as a payment method offered, right? The credit line doesn't is not sufficient, let's say, to cover for the purchase. So yeah, all of these things are the expectations on the left, but the reality is a little different. So buyers have confirmed to us, quite a few actually, that they're frustrating with the ordering experience and the journey. So apparently there's an opportunity for that journey to be improved. The decision making isn't as fast as they would like it to be. The checkout experience isn't as great as they expect it to be. And then again, the payment experience, right? Do they get the opportunity to pay in the way they want to pay? Okay, so just a few examples from what we have seen, right? I just want to give you some tangible things to think about. This is for 3 of our clients. One is Staples, it's an office supply company, you probably know them. Then Lenovo, you probably know them even better. And then we've got one that is a semiconductor manufacturer. We have some of our clients who do not like us to display their name in public, that's fine. But basically, it's all about what does the net term or the opportunity to pay on terms, be it 30, 60, or 90 days, what does that bring to that particular company? So on the Staples side, in the first year that they worked with us, they were able to offer the net terms, right? They saw a doubling of the number of customers on their portal. Right? On the Lenovo side, they saw more than a double AOV because it was so much easier to purchase from Lenovo. And then on the semiconductor side, we had more than 5 times the AOV as opposed to other payment methods that we saw in the checkout and in the invoicing. So just something to think about, how offering terms and the way you do that, right? Just being standard 30 or even 60 or 90 days can help bring you more business and build up loyalty and recurring sales. A bit more inspiration, perhaps. Another use case. This is an OEM that wanted to build an e-commerce channel. And basically, the challenge was that there were a lot of buyers spread across Europe, so they had to deal with currencies and languages and stuff like that, and they weren't in a position to scale rapidly, basically. So basically, we were able to help them take on the complexity for them. So they focused on sales and marketing. They were still the ones that optimized the journey on the commercial side, did the website and everything. But in the back, the onboarding and the invoice issuing, collections and everything, that was done on our end. And then from a global expansion perspective, there was a client that had different internal or had a problem with a technical readiness, let's say, internally and from their e-commerce channel perspective, and needed more like I would say a plug and play kind of solution. So basically, we configured that plugged into their e-commerce portal and basically build a seamless experience during the customer journey, whilst they expanded into other countries. So, what does operationalizing net terms mean? This is just painting a picture of how it could look like. I don't know if this applies to your world, so hopefully some of this applies to you, maybe much of this applies to you, but just generically you think about the 6 steps basically in the journey, which is the buyer qualification, right? So if they have been enthused by your portal, your e-com website, and they want to become a customer, right? The onboarding needs to take place. You got to think about how do you automate and make it a seamless experience to do your KYC and your credit management checks, right? So think about, do you want to integrate with credit bureaus? Do you want to work with a credit insurance? That also requires an integration. That makes the experience pretty slick and very fast, right? Rather than taking multiple days to do the onboarding, right? Then the onboarding itself, right? You want to be sure that when you onboard a buyer, that you understand upfront if there's any specific needs. So if you onboard a buyer, you want to ask the buyer some questions in a loose way to understand what their requirements are, and then adjust your ERP system so that those requirements are effective once the order comes through. So be it PO policies or special reporting for invoicing or something like that. And then you want to understand in an omni-channel environment as well, what's the journey that this buyer is gonna go through, and how do I make sure that that experience is actually seamless and consistent across all the different channels, right? Because they will engage with your sales team, and they will then want to see what has been discussed with that salesperson reflected in your e-commerce channel. Or if you've got, I don't know, you've got a shop, perhaps, a network of shops. If your buyer comes to your shop, for example, to look at your products and then purchase online, right? Again, you want to have that seamless experience. So something to think about. Then the invoicing, we spoke about it before. That is pretty interesting, especially in the light of the new EU regulation, the e-invoicing mandates. Every country is going to do its own thing. I'm sure you recognize this. EU is fantastic, but it still means that 27 countries are doing their own thing. So that goes for e-invoicing as well. So that means that if you operate in different European countries, you do need to think about what does that mean for invoicing in those countries, right? Then you wanna think about the settlement, right, or the payment that comes in, right, and how can I improve my DSO, right? I think for every one of you it will resonate. Cash is king nowadays. People are thinking, your finance departments will be thinking about how can we get the cash in the door more quickly, right? So you want to think about that, and then the buyer payment itself. Obviously, when the payment comes in, how do I make sure that it's reconciled and it's basically linked to the right customer and the right invoice? Because at that time, if you have a customer that pays on terms, it frees up probably their internal credit line and they can continue to purchase, right? So internally, there's a lot of magic happening as well, and I'm sure this will happen in your company too, which is there's sales on one hand, and I think every one of us here is very commercially oriented, but then there's our nice colleagues on the finance side, right? And they sometimes have some other objectives. So as you can see from the slide here, they are not always aligned, right? Commercial teams are looking for more sales, grow revenue and stuff like that. Whereas on the finance side, people want to protect their liquidity, their risk, and all that. And then, on the sales side, there's pipeline management and driving pipelines and so on. Whereas on the finance side, people are like, no, what's my DSO and what's my cash flow, my working capital, etc. Right? Again, on the sales side, you want to close the deal, you want to go as fast as possible, but at the same time, finance says, let's mitigate financial risks here for a minute, right? And then there's a little bit of a conflict if deals are delayed and if expansion is limited, right? Then that sort of dampens your ability to sell, and at the same time, flexible sales, if sales needs to be flexible to close a deal, right, offers risk on the finance side. So there's always that fine line or that balance that happens within every company, I suppose, that you wanna manage. So a checklist for you to think about, right? What are options to consider and to work on? And I think it was said before, I think Thomas, you said it, or maybe Lisa, don't do all of them in one go. That's probably too much. But just look at simple things that yield the most results, let's say, or where's most of your pain, basically, right? So it could be your instant credit line management. How can I improve and speed up the onboarding process so that sales can happen more quickly, right? Is it the checkout the checkout experience itself and offering the terms or whatever is needed on the customer side, whatever they prefer as a payment method, right? Is it the consistency in the user experience across all your sales channels, right? You can think about that. You want to think about scale, but you also want to think about customization, especially for your larger customers, because they require customization quite often. And what does that look like? You want to think about enhancing your portal, basically by offering more things that your customers can do self-serve, like looking at invoices, for example, or doing disputes in a more digital way, right? The purchase controls, right? Especially larger buyers are operating with purchase controls. How do you embed that in the journey and in your digital processes? And then, we've spoken about this on our table, seamless integrations into buyer systems, right? ERP integrations are key. They seem to be a big trend. What I'm hearing is that punch outs on our table, that was discussed a few times. We're hearing that with our customers as well. But ERP integrations are also relevant if you think about invoice processing. So your customer wants to process that invoice as soon as possible, and you want them to because that means that they can make the payment faster. So there's another ERP integration that is really helpful, which is with the ERP system of your buyer, your customer, to make sure that the invoice lands into their ERP system and it can be approved for payment more quickly. So, how to get started? Just a couple of considerations or hints maybe. Determine what metrics and KPIs matter for you. And then basically define what are one or two things that you want to work on or you want to improve, right? Determine what you can do in-house, right? What can you do in-house? Where do your skills lie? Do you have the capabilities in-house to enhance things and to improve things, or do you want to think about partnering with somebody? Right, depending on your capacity and your focus. And if you choose a vendor, then obviously build a business case utilizing, the pros and cons. And that is not just the cost saving of things. That is also, coming back to my previous statement, the growth engine. If you make the experience more seamless, not only on the front end, on the commercial side, but also on the back end, right, it will bring you loyalty. It will bring you recurring business, and therefore you will see metrics go up, such as AOV and customer retention and stuff like that, or even annual spend. So this is basically what I wanted to give you. Last but not least, if you do this well, and those companies that are doing this well are, in our opinion, positioned really well in the market to be ahead of others. So pick and choose. I hope you have had some inspiration. If you want to look up for more inspiration or some of the research that we did on B2B buyers, feel free to use the QR code or go to our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Inez. Thank you for that. And actually quite a brain snack, I must say. We do all this user experience. We speak about the frictionless journey, but then how do we get paid? It's like it's lost in translation somehow. And it should be a seamless experience. This is really what we want in the end. We're not here for we're not non-profit organizations, hopefully. So, how do we commercialize this? It's a really interesting aspect. Any questions for Inez on this presentation? Oh, it's revolutionizing for the room as well. How many of you work with this kind of approach already within your e-commerce? Tanya has a question here. Yes, Malin. Malin is coming.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. My question would be, from a financial perspective, have you done comparisons to what it would actually mean to customize the ERP as opposed to bringing in a new platform and integrating that in? And then my second question would be, I guess you're integrating them with the ERP and as well as e-commerce platforms, then, right?
Correct. Yeah, correct. So we integrate basically with all the systems, even with Salesforce, if we had to, if that's of value, because there's a lot of back and forth data exchange between us and our clients and their customers, of course. So I'm not sure if I understand your first question, so correct me if I misunderstood. I think you said, did we do some calculations on the difference between working with a third party or doing things in-house? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Gotcha. Well, the answer is probably no, because we probably don't have all the data points of our clients, right? To make that sort of that ROI call or to make that judgment, but we do feed a lot of information, as in we've got a lot of metrics, right, which is standard for us, as in what's the average days to pay for our customers, for example, right? That could be used if your days to pay would be X and our days to pay would be Y, and you've got a cash advantage. For example, just as an example, right? So those kind of information we do feed into our client, and basically we help them make the business case. And obviously, sometimes clients say, no, I'm better off, doing this myself because we've got the skill sets or whatever. But at the same time, there's also quite often, things that haven't been incorporated in the consideration if you have the bilateral conversation, which is then leading to, a different conversation. And that's why, we serve the clients that we do.
Oh.
Are you processing the payments yourself as well? Also, are you a PSP or are you working with payment service providers as well?
It's a great question. No, we are not a PSP. We do process transactions, we do process payments, but it's very dedicated to the net terms offering. So where a PSP would say, I take all the payment methods like credit cards, PayPal, the whole shabam, right? We could click into a PayPal, into a PSP, we could, but most of the times we actually work as a separate division, if you will, alongside our client. We almost function like an extended arm for them because we offer what most of the times is offered in-house, right? It's just AR management, basically. But because the digitalization offers a lot of complexity that quite a few companies can't master, they're like, okay, net terms goes to somebody else. But yeah, there's overlap with the PSP in the sense that we do process transactions and payments, but it's very dedicated to net terms.
Okay, clear.
Thank you. First of all, thank you. It was a very interesting piece of e-commerce that we often forget, so thanks a lot. I have actually two questions. The first one, do you see this service mainly to be offered to prospect to convert them to customers? Or do you also see an advantage for existing customers that are buying online and already have sort of payment terms most of the time? So that is the first question. And second, for the prospects to offer them payment terms, how do you decide, or what are the rules? How do you put the rules in place to follow usually the rules that we already have in an organization?
Great question. Let me start with the latter and then go to the first. So on the latter, we have built a proprietary risk management engine, and that covers for both fraud and sanction, KYC, and AML checks, as well as for credit checks. So basically, we pull a lot of data from different credit bureaus and other data. Basically, I call it sort of an engine. It goes into a tombola, and then it spits out basically, okay, this is good to go, and this is the credit line, or this is not good to go, or it's good to go with the lower credit line that was requested. But the request comes from the customer, so they basically make an estimation. Okay, I want to purchase, I don't know, 100,000 a month. I'm making it up, right? So, and the program is, and I want to pay on net terms 30, then I need a credit line of at least 100,000. They apply for 100,000, and basically we put it in Tombola and say, yep, you're good to go for 100,000. And we manage then the payments and the credit line. The incoming payments frees up the credit line. The purchases obviously pull from the credit line, and that management is done on our end. And that enables us, because we build that digitally, right, that enables us to do that instantly. So somebody comes on board, and basically based on a couple of data points from the customer, we throw it in Tombola, and it spits out the answer. Yep, you're good to go. And then it basically, it sort of flows into the normal purchasing process on the client portal. So that's one. The other one is a great question, actually, because we do both conversion as well as we call retention or repeat spend. So yes, it will help new customers to come on board because, again, if they get the approval to purchase online and on terms, that's one of their preferred payment methods, so that's fine. But then it's a matter of indeed how do we nurture those and how do we grow those accounts? And we typically work with our clients to collaboratively work on campaign management. We have a lot of data on our clients. So one of our clients, Lenovo, I can make that publicly. Lenovo relies heavily on us when it comes down to customer spend. So they basically say, if we have a list of customers that haven't spent in X time, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, we feed that into their telesales team. Their telesales team goes after, or their field sales team goes after their customers and say, hey, we haven't seen you in a while. You know, they may come up with some promotion or whatever, right? And we handle the email campaigns on the back as well. So that's just a flavor of how we do that. But there's a lot of intimate relationships between us and our clients to help them grow. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Thank you. Give Inez a hand. Thank you.
Thank you.